Because whenever it's on my right side, for some reason it falls off. So we're ready to pick it back up. We're going to pick it back up with capital E. Capital E is our next word. So capital E says, then once the believer is stabilized, comma, he is strengthened, or sthenao. That's S-T-H-E-N short O long O, sthenao. And I had in here, much like martial arts or in shooting, you have to be in a stable position before you can do them correctly, okay? And I've said that before, so I'm not going to say it. You can put it in your notes if you want, but I need to pick up a little bit of speed here, okay? So much like in martial arts or in shooting, you have to be in a stable position before you can do them correctly. So continue the point. You can have no strength without first being stabilized. For example, if you've ever seen any lifting competitions where guys are doing clean and jerks and lifting weights and things like that, they aren't doing it on one foot. They're doing it on both feet, usually good shoulders width apart, and having good stability, because that will give them maximum strength. So you can have no strength without first being stabilized. Okay. Once you have the stability of the soul, comma, then you can have a strengthened soul, period. So the idea is that once Bible doctrine mends the broken nets, right, mends the soul caused by the suffering circumstances, using the faith rest technique, then you have mental stability, and that leads you to strength for the time of suffering. 2 Corinthians 12, 9 and 10. Our whole passage is telling us to depend on the Lord. The 2 Corinthians 12, 9 and 10 passage is the one where my strength is sufficient, where Paul was praying for having the thing removed. Okay, our whole passage is telling us to depend on the Lord, period. Total dependence means that you are to trust the Lord constantly. Colon. Exodus 14:13. Quote, stand by and see the deliverance of the Lord. Period, end quote. He gives strength to the weak and weary. Period. The Bible never says God helps those who help themselves. Period. God helps the helpless. Isaiah 40:29. Quote, he gives strength to the weary, comma, and to him who lacks might, he increases power. Period. So there's two Hebrew words there, and the one word that's used for might is talking just about the ability to do something, the ability to move a rock or move something. But the power was a different word, and power there is much more than might, because power is associated with not only the ability to do it, but the understanding of why you have the ability to do it, and the ability to do it beyond what it needs to have to get done. Okay? In other words, you have excess left over, so you have power. Okay? So he gives strength to the weary, and to him who lacks might, he increases power. So he gives you more ability, essentially, to do it. Subpoint F, capital F. Then lastly, we have the verb themeliao. That's Themeli short O long O. Themeliao. The basic meaning of this word is, quote, to provide a base for a structure, comma, or to lay a foundation, comma, end quote. And then is extended figuratively to mean, comma, quote, to provide a secure basis for the inner life, comma, to establish a modus operandi. Modus operandi is MO, that means that you're a basis of operation, that's how you act. Okay, to establish a modus operandi based on biblical doctrine and the truth of the Word of God, comma, to be firmly established in God's plan, period, end quote. Okay? Modus operandi based on Bible doctrine and the truth of the Word of God to be firmly established in God's plan, period, end quote. What Peter means here is that Christ establishes in us an unwavering foundation or way of life. Remember, Christ is our foundation on which we build gold, silver, precious stones, okay, or wood, hay, stubble. Right? But He is the foundation. He establishes a foundation for us, and that foundation continues to be strengthened, if you will, by the Bible doctrine that we get. Okay? So what Peter means here is that Christ establishes in us an unwavering foundation, a way of life, period. We also see this concept when Paul writes to the Colossians, comma, quote. So we also see this concept when Paul writes to the Colossians, comma, quote. If indeed you continue in the faith, firmly established and steadfast, comma. So we have our word here again. So if indeed you continue in the faith, firmly established and steadfast, comma, and not moved away from the hope of the gospel, that you have heard, comma, end quote. It goes on, but the idea here was if you continue in the faith firmly established and steadfast. That's what I was getting to. And this is Colossians 1:23. Continue the point. I have translated this as a single word to keep the strength of the figure of speech. So in other words, I didn't say, and establish you in a way of life. I didn't add the in a way of life. You're supposed to understand that. But I wanted to keep the asendetic construction so that we've got that strength that Peter wanted us to have. In this case, the clarification in the English would have destroyed the strength of the figure of speech. So I translated it as a single word. So I've translated as a single word to keep the strength of the figure of speech. The idea here is that no suffering is too great for the plan of God. So again here, the idea is that there's no suffering that's too great for the plan of God. And through the suffering, he provides the means to enjoy it as grace. He restores our souls, provides stability for us, strengthens us through the whole process of suffering and through the result of passing these tests. And finally, as the last step, we're provided a secure basis for our continued function. Okay, so once we learn the information, once we get through the suffering, we come out the other end, if you will, stronger and more firmly established in God's plan. We say, hey, I never would have been able to handle that if I hadn't had the doctrine to do that. And you understand the importance then of staying in fellowship, the importance of functioning properly. See, the individuals that never do, the individuals that don't function properly, they continue along, they continue to get discipline, as if they're believers, they continue to get discipline associated with not functioning properly, and then they wonder, what's happening to me? Why is God doing all these things to me? I don't understand, right? And they never get the enjoyment of saying, wow, look at that, I used this information that I received. First of all, I got the information, I was here to get it, I learned how to apply it, and I applied it, and I got to see how fantastically strong God is, the types of things that he will provide, the grace that he will provide. I want more of that. See, they never get to the point where they want more of that. During the break, I was showing an interview with a fantastic guitarist, and the guy is very, very humble. He's really a really good guy to watch from a musician standpoint. And one of the things he talks about is practicing the basics. Every morning he gets up and he practices for many hours on the very basics, on certain things that he's working on as far as his fingering and things like that before he even starts doing the melody and starts creating his own songs and things like that, because you've got to have the basics down first. Well, that's like us. We have to apply the doctrine. We have to get it, apply it, make sure we've got it down before we come up with creative ways to use it when the circumstances hit us, the rationales that we need. See, and that's what he's doing. He says you can't become a master of the instrument without practice. We can't become the masters of doctrine without practice. And God gives us, in grace, the suffering circumstances that we need to practice and apply it and use it and have confidence in it and grow. Okay? Last sentence. We are established in his plan and are protected for all eternity. Period. Subpoint G. One of the most difficult challenges in the Christian life is to depend on the Lord for deliverance and strength without interjecting human solutions. Period. See, part of the old sin nature, human nature as we call it, is that you want to be independent, right? You've got the self-made man that came up with his own solutions. That's part of what's in our old sin nature. It comes from Satan, to want to be the one that can solve all the problems. That's why when Christ was talking, he said, it's easier for a camel to come through the eye of the needle, which is a very, very small opening in the wall. Okay, a fully laden camel, to get through that opening, had to get down on its knees and try and crawl through, right? But he's saying it's easier for the camel to come through the eye of the needle than it is for a rich man to accept Christ, because the rich man is the one who's a self-made. He wants to have his own solutions. He doesn't want to trust. So one of the most difficult challenges as a Christian is to depend on the Lord for strength, deliverance and strength, without interjecting your own solution. That's why many times Faith Rest many times rebound doesn't work because you want to give it to God, and then you say, ooh, I thought of something, and be careful what I just said doesn't work. It always works. It's when you make it not work, okay? You give it to God, and then you say, oh, wait a minute. We talked about this last week. Oh, wait a minute. I think I got an idea, and you try and solve it yourself again. And so you take it back. And then you give it to God, and then you take it back. And you give it to God, and then you take it back. And it doesn't get solved like it should have if you had just given it to God and left it there. Okay? That's the old sin nature. That's human nature. Okay? And that's what I'm going to say here. Okay? Deliverance and strength without interjecting human solutions. You may constantly try to solve your own problems and repeatedly encounter a stone wall, comma, and you'll have the bumps on your head to show for it, exclamation point. See, every time you try to take the problem back and solve it without God's power, you're running full force into a into a stone wall. Slam. Okay? And then you don't learn. You get back up and you do it again and again and again. Until finally you realize, oh, maybe I ought to give it to God and let him handle it and not keep trying to take it away. That's when you start to mature. That's when you grow. That's when you learn. That's when the psalmist said, thank you for the affliction. I had to learn from it. Okay? You have to learn to turn things over to God. That's why, as Jack used to say, the coward can be the strongest person there is. Because when you have this guy who's got a hero complex, he's going to try and solve it all himself. The coward's going to say, I know I can't do it, and therefore I've got to turn to God. Okay? Continue the point. So we had bumps on your head to show for it, exclamation point. Instead, recognize your total helplessness and begin to depend on him, period. Exodus 14:14, quote, the Lord will fight for you while you keep silent, end quote, period, end quote. See, as we've been studying the Old Testament on Wednesday, what are some of the things we've seen that proves that? He had to take some individuals and stop them so that there was absolutely nothing they could do, right? We have the Exodus. In the Exodus, he puts them right up against the Red Sea. There was absolutely nothing they could do. They couldn't swim it. They couldn't cross it. They had to stop and stand by and watch the deliverance of the Lord. There wasn't anything they could do about it, right? And then as we're studying with the Judges, right? We have the fact that he had to glean the troops because there were so many of them, and he was concerned that they would try and take credit for his victory, the one he was going to provide for them. So he took them down to 300, so where they were outnumbered 100 to 1. Okay? So that he could show the power that he had. Well, don't make God smack you up so that you have to shut up and watch the deliverance. Instead, take this and keep silent. Put it in his hands, let the Lord fight it, and you keep silent. Okay? Subpoint H. All of these verbs then, comma, as a process, comma. So all of these verbs then, as a process, tell us that God will give us everything we need to withstand our suffering circumstances. Period. More specifically, here it's talking about the suffering circumstances in chapters 3 through 5, which are going to affect potentially affect the individuals in the 5 churches of Asia of the Asia Minor province. Okay. So give us what we need to handle the suffering circumstances. Continue the point. But as we've learned, comma, this blessing will occur in God's time frame. And not ours. Period. So this blessing will occur in God's time frame and not ours. Therefore, we must depend or trust and have faith in the Lord. Period. In the Hebrew, there are several words for faith, colon. Since I've been giving you quite a few passages from the Old Testament, I'm going to talk a little bit about Hebrew. We spend an awful lot of time on Greek and not enough time on Hebrew, so I'm going to give you this. And these are words that deal with using the faith rest technique, using the information that's in our passage, okay? So, in the Hebrew, there are several words for faith, colon. Subpoint 1. Aman, or Amen. Long A, M, short A, N. Translated, quote, believed, end quote. In Genesis 15:6, is used primarily for salvation. It means, quote, to use God as a prop or as a foundation, semicolon, to lean on him, period, end quote. But after salvation, it still means to lean on him as we need, period. So just give you a little quick Hebrew lesson. So if you're learning Greek, how to read Greek, and you want to learn how to read Hebrew, remember it goes this way. And this little letter right here, actually, you can't have a Hebrew vowel without having a consonant. And so this is like a consonant holder, okay? This is the aleph. There's no sound associated with that. And then that's the A right there. These are the vowels. That's a long A or short A. And then that's the M, okay? And then this is an end, okay? So it's Amen, or yeah, Aman, okay? Subpoint 2, Batak. Got Gotta keep saying the A for the short or long A. Batok. B long A, T A, short A, CH. So B long A, T short A, CH. Translated, quote, trust, end quote. In Psalm 37, verses 3 and 5. Psalm 37:3 says, trust in the Lord and do good, dwell in the land and cultivate faithfulness. And Psalm 3:5 says, commit your way to the Lord, trust also in him, and he will do it. Okay? So translated trust in Psalm 37:3 and 5, and 91:2, comma. That's still Psalm. So Psalm 91:2 says, I will say to the Lord, comma, quote, my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. Okay? So those are good things to put in your prayer list as well. Okay? So Batak, translated trust in Psalm 37:3 and 5 and 91:2, was originally used for one wrestler body slamming another. From this word came the figurative meaning, quote, pick up your troubles and slam them on the Lord. Period. End quote. See, so you're supposed to be, the old I'm rubber, you're glue. You're supposed to be the rubber, right? When something comes at you, it's supposed to bounce off of you and go stick to the Lord. Okay? You body slam it to the Lord. Here you go, right? You don't just give it to it, you throw it at him, right? I don't want it, you take it. Okay? And this, of course, is the basic word for faith rest from the Hebrew. So this is the basic word for faith rest. And that's why I gave you those three passages, Psalm 37:3, 5, and 91:2. Subpoint 3. This is two long A's. Okay? Long A, short A. Well, this is long A, and this is a CH, long A, S, long A, AH. Chasa. Chasa. CH, long A, S, long A, H. Chasa. Translated, quote, refuge, end quote. In Psalm 57:1, originally meant, quote, to flee as a rabbit, seeking refuge in the cleft of a rock, period, end quote. See, when rabbits get attacked or they get fearful, they don't really have a fight or flight mechanism because they can't fight. They're not built to have anything to fight. If you've ever looked at a rabbit, yeah, they have some claws and they have some teeth, but those are meant basically for eating. So their mechanism is mainly flight. Okay, we had a good bunny one time, a really nice bunny, and its flight mechanism had to go into full bore because we also had a dog, and the bunny got out of the bunny hutch and got down on the ground, and the dog said, "Ooh, a toy." The dog wasn't really going to eat the rabbit, but wanted to play with the rabbit, maybe a little bit rougher than the rabbit wanted to be played with, right? And so the rabbit had to learn how to flee. Okay. Anyway, that's what this was, to flee as a rabbit seeking refuge in a rock, in the cleft of a rock, period, end quote. Again, Continue the point. Again, it's a word for faith. The psalmist, who of course was David, the psalmist used the analogy for hiding in the cleft of the rock, capital R, and you can put in parentheses Christ, where nothing can touch you, period. See, Christ is referred to as the cleft of the rock. He's referred to as the rock many times. We have, of course, we have songs talking about, I hide my soul in the cleft of the rock, and you also have the song about, on the solid rock on which I stand, right? That's what we're talking about here, is refuge. Subpoint 4. There's 5 words here, by the way. Subpoint 4. Yachal. Yachal. That's Y, or actually J, if you wanted to do it in the way modern does it. This would be a J, and that's an A. See the CH? There it is again. CH, another A, and then that's an L. So it's Y, long A, CH, short A, L. Yachal. Translated, quote, hope, end quote. Translated hope is found in Job 13:15. Sure. Yachal, translated hope, is found in Job 13:15 and Lamentations 3:21 and 24. Period. It carries the connotation of trusting while in extreme pain. Period. Even though you are utterly miserable or in agony of suffering, comma. Remember, when we talk about suffering circumstances, as long as it's suffering circumstances and not true suffering, which implies discipline, you won't have mental anguish, but you can certainly have agony, and you can certainly be miserable and have suffering from the standpoint of a physical standpoint. So I just want to make that clear. Even though you are utterly miserable or in agony of suffering, you can have the confidence of deliverance, and the ability to rely on the processes in our verse, or the process in our verse. So the word means to trust under pressure. And unfortunately, we're not going to get the 5th one because we are completely out of time. Okay, so that's where we'll pick it up. Next week we will get through with this verse, but I like I said, I'm spending a little bit of time on it because it is so important for us to be able to understand suffering in its true context as blessing and what's necessary to handle it so that it truly is maximum blessing for you as you move through maturity. Okay? So with that said, we are going to do our second song.